Today I'd like to talk to you about the Chesapeake Bay. Imagine sitting on the shoreline, looking out into beautiful blue waters with the sun setting on the horizon, dolphins jumping, pelicans flying by to roost for the night, kids are playing in the shoreline, and people are fishing up and down the beach. This is what you'll experience at the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is a beautiful watershed on the eastern Atlantic seaboard between Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia. It's right on the corner of Virginia Beach where I live, and it connects to the Atlantic Ocean there. There's a lot of diversity and it's a beautiful ecosystem. Today I'd like to tell you about 3 species that are very important to the people of the bay and to the bay itself. These are dolphins, blue crabs, and oysters. The first thing I'd like to tell you about is dolphins. Dolphins are very important to the bay and the people around them. They're the second smartest animal, and they come to the bay each year to migrate for 2 different reasons. One is food, and one is to raise their young. They come here because there's high quantities of bait fish like mullet, croaker, spot, and menhaden. This is what the dolphins like to eat. It's their favorite food. They get in a little, what's called a bait ball. So they actually swirl the fish into a ball and then take turns swimming through it and eating the fish one at a time. The second reason, which is also important to the dolphins, is that they need the safe waters of the Chesapeake Bay to breed. They come here each year around June. Some stay all year, but they're mainly adults. The young need the safe waters because there's a lot less sharks in this area than other places on the East Coast. So they come here in large numbers, and they stay till about the end of October into November, and then their young are usually big enough by then to make the trip back into the warmer waters for the winter. This is really good for the people because it brings tourists to our area. People love to see the dolphins. They're a city emblem for Virginia Beach. You can ride down the boardwalk and see people all day long just talking away about, oh, look, the beautiful dolphins. And it also leads to eco tours, like which I did. So you can take people out on kayaks, or there's some boat tours you can do, like the Rudy Rocket and the Rudy Flipper. And you can go out and watch the dolphins swim, and they're in big congregation of pods at this time, so you'll see them in high numbers. And it's a life-changing experience to a lot of people. I've had a lot of people tell me that they've, never been that close to an animal that big, and it's a healing thing to people too, because it brings them closer to the natural habitat, and they can see that there's other things sometimes in the world, especially if they've never been to the ocean before, like a lot of people have from the Midwest. So the dolphins are very important. The next thing I'd like to tell you about is the blue crabs. This is much farther down the food chain, but it's equally important. So the blue crab lives in shallow water, and it feeds on, dead stuff, so it's a decomposer. It's a big fishery for Virginia Beach and everywhere around the bay because they fish about 2/3 of the nation's supply each year out of the bay, and it's hundreds of thousands of pounds of crabs. It's also a really good thing for the people in the bay because it's a fun gathering type thing. People have low country boils, and they'll boil a bunch of crabs and potatoes and vegetables and sausage and everything, and everybody gets around the table and has fun eating it, and it's been a big thing for people around the bay and locals for a long time. Even if you don't like crab, it's still a fun time. The third thing I'd like to tell you about is oysters. Oysters are essentially the lungs of the Chesapeake Bay because they're filter feeders. Being filter feeders, they constantly move water in and out all day and clean it. An average oyster can filter about 50 gallons of water a day, and that's amazing if you think about they're doing that on hundreds of thousands and millions of oysters every day. So they're very important to the bay to keep the ecosystem clean. They're also very important to the bay for economic reasons as well, for the people that live around them. Oysters are farmed and harvested here yearly, and they supply a lot of the U.S. with oysters. So this helps bring income to people around the bay as well. They are also revered as a great food, and in the fall people have oyster roast and stuff like that, and this brings people together, brings families together, and it's always a fun time. People bring food and drinks and roast oysters over the open fire, so it's also a cultural thing very much for the Chesapeake Bay. In conclusion, I hope you've learned something about the Chesapeake Bay and these three species: oysters, blue crabs, and dolphins. They're very diverse and unique, and they're very important not only to the bay but to the people around them. And the bay is also very important to them because they need it for their natural habitat. They are beautiful and awe-inspiring, just as the bay itself. So thank you for your time today, and I hope you get out on the bay and maybe learn a few things about it.